She stood alone in the corner of the strategy tent, quietly tracing her finger across a hand-drawn map. Just another civilian consultant. Or so they thought. Grizzled SEALs scoffed under their breath, amused at the girl with dusty boots and oversized glasses. But then she whispered something barely audible, a sequence of coordinates. One by one, the elite operators froze. A silence fell like a dropped weapon. And then, the highest-ranking SEAL stood upright and saluted, because they finally saw who she really was. The desert was brutal that morning, dry wind, glaring sunlight, and a sense of something quietly simmering just beneath the horizon. A convoy of Humvees rolled toward Forward Operating Base Kestrel, tires biting into the gravel, carrying dust and decisions no one wanted to make. Inside the operations tent, tension had already made a home. A covert SEAL team call sign Viper Echo had been pulled from an active mission and rerouted. Here, no one explained why. And when no one explains, suspicion is the first thing to unpack. Petty Officer Wade Boulder Haynes adjusted his gloves and grunted toward the corner of the tent. "You're telling me she's our new analyst?" In the corner stood a civilian woman. No rank insignia, no medals, no military presence, just dusty hiking boots, khaki slacks, and a frayed utility shirt too big for her frame. Her name badge read L. Ward. Her glasses slipped slightly. As she studied a map splayed across a folding table, she didn't look up. "Looks like she wandered in from a university research trip," Haynes muttered, louder now. "She doesn't even have a laptop," said LT Marcus Ruiz, the team's field commander. "I have eyes," she replied softly, not looking at them. "And a memory that doesn't fail under heat stress or GPS jamming." The room paused. Her voice was calm, steady, British accent soft, educated, but not performative. She placed her finger on a hand-drawn coordinate line. "Here, you've been searching the northwest sector. That's the wrong basin. The cave you're looking for is here, Delta Slope, northeast quadrant, 23 meters deeper than your recon skin allowed for. The air density skin missed it because the stone layering mimics surface hardness." The SEALs exchanged glances. She still hadn't looked at them. Ruiz crossed his arms. "How do you know that?" "I read the topography the way you read muscle twitches before a fight." Now she looked up, calm, curious, not arrogant, just assured. Then she walked away and poured herself water from the side table. Not a tremor in her hand. Her name was Lena Ward, a contracted geointelligence specialist from an unnamed wing of a NATO Joint Initiative at least. That's what her dossier claimed. She had no formal military training, no field experience logged, and her clearance level was higher than Ruiz's by 2 steps. Everyone felt it, but no one dared say what they were really thinking. Who the hell is this woman? That afternoon, the commander of the base, Colonel Grant Morris, called Ruiz aside. "She's here because someone in Langley made a call. That outranks all of us. She's a liability. She's your new asset." Ruiz pushed back. "She doesn't belong here." Morris didn't blink. "That's not your call. Follow her coordinates tomorrow, or don't. But if she's right, we may finally locate the insurgent science cell we've been chasing for 6 months." Outside the tense, Lena Ward walked alone, not fast, not with purpose, but with practiced calm, as if pacing was her way of thinking. She carried no phone, no tactical headset, just a small leather notebook she kept close to her chest. When Ruiz finally confronted her near the comms tower, she didn't flinch. "You've got everyone on edge," he said. "Because I read a map, because no one knows who you are." She gave him a small smile. "Then we're even." He frowned. "We don't have time for games." "I'm not playing." He leaned in, lowering his voice. 3 months ago, an entire team was lost looking for that cave. 6 men. One of them was my cousin. If you're guessing, I'll bury you in that dust myself." She looked up, no fear in her gaze. "I'm not guessing, and I'm sorry for your loss." Then, softer, "That's why I came." That night, while the SEALs cleaned weapons and ran drills, Lena sat alone by the generator shack, sketching in her notebook under a hanging bulb. Hart, the team's tech specialist, peeked at her pages when she wasn't looking. It wasn't poetry. It was terrain memory, hand-drawn thermal vectors, elevation decay curves, wind slope algorithms, the kind of data usually crunched by multi-million-dollar drones. She was doing it in pencil. "Hey," he said, gently, "how'd you learn this stuff?" She didn't stop drawing. "My father used to say maps don't lie. People do." "Was he military?" "He was a cartographer. Smart guy." She looked up. "Dead guy." Heart swallowed. "Sorry." She nodded, the gesture graceful. "I get that a lot." Later, in the command tent, Colonel Morris briefed the team. "You'll follow Ms. Ward's route suggestion at 040. This is not optional." Grumbles, nods. Morris turned to Lena. "Any final input?" She pointed at the center of the map. "There's a false wall, hand-chiseled. It will echo differently. Knock 3 times, then twice." She didn't explain why, and no one asked. At 0350, the SEALs rolled out into jeeps, Lena riding quietly in the back with her notebook. Haynes still didn't like it. "You sure she's not some kind of spy?" Ruiz grunted. "She's not stupid enough to walk into enemy territory if she was. Or maybe she's too valuable to care." But Ruiz wasn't listening anymore. Up ahead, the terrain shifted, just as she said. The northern wind veered off a rock face that looked solid but felt hollow. The men fanned out. Ruiz tapped, once, twice, then 3 more. A hollow thump, then silence, then something shifted. Behind the stone. They'd found it, the entrance to a subterranean lab, carved into the cliffs. Inside were crates of documents, chemical residue, and computer units still warm. No hostiles. Just silence, and one thing more. A sealed case, bearing an American. Crushed one no one expected to see there. Back at base, as soldiers packed the evidence and analysts descended from black helicopters, Ruiz turned to Lena. "What aren't you telling me?" She looked tired now, older somehow. "My father was taken," she said quietly, 12 years ago. "He was mapping this region. They said it was a random raid. I found his map in that lab just now. And the intel, I fed enough of it back through proxies to get noticed. Someone finally listened." He stared at her. "You built this whole op?" "No, I just drew the path until someone walked it." Then she opened her notebook, and for the first time, let someone else read a page. By sunrise, the base was buzzing. The mission was a success, at least officially. Satellite hard drives, encrypted journals, and vials of unidentified compounds were now under lock and code. For the first time in months, Colonel Morris allowed himself the briefest exhale. But not everyone was celebrating. Ruiz stood near the armory, watching Lena Ward hand over her dusty notebook to a black-suited intelligence officer. She said nothing as she handed it off. No pride, no resentment, just silence, like the handover was expected or rehearsed. Ruiz hated it. That night, the debriefs began. Hart typed his report. The team submitted video footage, and Ruiz was summoned to the colonel's office. "Good work," Morris said, pouring 2 cups of bitter coffee. "You found something no one else could. You followed her intel. You trusted her." "I followed orders," Ruiz replied. "I didn't trust her. I still don't." Morris studied him. "She got results. So did those labs. That place wasn't abandoned. It was evacuated. Hours before we arrived. Maybe she saved your team. Or maybe we were bait. That landed." Morris didn't deny it. "You think she's lying?" he asked. "I think she knows more than she's telling, and I think we're cleaning up her trail." Meanwhile, the rest of Viper Echo didn't know what to think. Some now respected her. Others still muttered behind her back. SEALs don't like puzzles they can't solve, especially when they're human. Hart tried to approach her after dinner. "You always plan this far ahead," she shrugged. "Mapping is more about probabilities than predictions. That lab, that wasn't your first find, was it?" She smiled faintly. "I've been pointing people to places they didn't want to look for a long time, even when it puts you in danger." She looked down. "Especially then." The next day, things shifted. A new figure arrived on base. Director Renner, a Defense Intelligence Agency official with a polished suit, trimmed beard, and smile that didn't reach his eyes. He walked with purpose and had clear authority. Even Morris deferred slightly. He called a meeting. Lena was not invited. Ruiz and Hart sat opposite Renner inside the comms room. "You've done well," Renner said, "but moving forward, Your team is being reassigned to Phase 2 under new oversight." "What does that mean?" Hart asked. "It means your op was the opening move in a larger containment mission. The cave was one of several. And what about Lena?" Ruiz cut in. Renner sipped from a steel flask. "Miss Ward's contract has expired." Just like that, her clearance was tied to this mission. "The data is secure. Her involvement ends here." Ruiz stood. "You're sidelining her after she found the damn place." Renner stood too, not blinking. "She served her function that evening." Lena was packing a worn duffel near the generator shed when Ruiz approached. "They're cutting you loose," he said. "I figured," she replied, not surprised. "You're okay with that?" She zipped her bag. "This was never about staying." "But you knew about the other sites, didn't you?" She didn't answer. "You don't just read maps, Lena, you draw the story around them. You knew that lab was part of something bigger." Her voice softened. "I didn't have permission to tell you. You don't need permission anymore. They're erasing you." She turned. "Ruiz, they erased me a long time ago." He swallowed hard. "At least tell me the truth now. Who are you really?" She hesitated. Her eyes flickered grief, restraint, calculation. "Then, my father wasn't just a cartographer. He worked for Orchid Division before it was disbanded." Ruiz froze. Orchid Division was the stuff of rumors ultra classified, preemptive, intelligence gathering through non-conventional means, field memory operatives, geosymbolic decoding. He was hunted after he leaked evidence. They said he disappeared in a storm. I found his trail. It led to that cave. You used us." "No," she said firmly. "I saved you, and I saved the data. But yes, I got my answers too." She tossed the duffel over her shoulder. "I just didn't expect it to hurt this much." Back in the main tent, Hart hacked into the transfer logs after Lena's departure. He found something strange. Lena's authorization trail didn't lead back to NATO. It came from inside the DIA. But the order to revoke her credentials, that came from Renner's personal line. Hart printed it, tucked it into an envelope, and slid it onto Ruiz's cot that night. The next morning, Ruiz stood before Colonel Morris and dropped the paper. On his desk, "She didn't fail us. We failed her." By then, Lena was already halfway across the border, sitting in the back of a non-military truck, watching Scrubland blur past. She looked calm, but her hand trembled slightly. She reached into her coat and pulled out an old compass, the kind without batteries, the kind her father used to teach her with. She held it in her palm and whispered, "Tell me where next." 2 days after Lena's quiet exit from FOB Kestrel, the reports came in. A second underground site similar architecture, same encryption pattern had been discovered in eastern Turkmenistan. But this time, it was a trap. The SEAL team sent in didn't come back. Ruiz read the report in silence. The words blurred together. "Operation Black Quarry, mission failure. Suspected counterintel leak. All personnel presumed Kier." He gripped the paper until the edge cut into his hand. That team had used a map drawn by a DIA algorithm automated. No human confirmation. Lena's name had been removed from all contributing files. Ruiz stood up and walked out of the tent. No orders, no clearance, just a decision. Lena Ward didn't expect to see him. She was seated beneath a canopy in a refugee aid station just beyond the Kyrgyz border, translating field notes for a charity she'd never name aloud. Her sleeves were rolled up, her notebook now filled with quiet sketches of children, not train. But when she looked up and saw Ruiz walking across the compound, boots still dusty, eyes sharper than ever, her breath hitched. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "Neither were you," he replied. He held out a folder. "Mission log, Operation Black Quarry. They sent a team in without verifying the Heat Bloom signature. Every instinct you trained into us they ignored, and 5 men died." She took the folder. Her hands didn't tremble. "They always rush when they think the math is clean," she murmured. Ruiz watched her. "You knew Orchid Division wasn't done, that they'd planted decoy sites." "I suspected," she said, "but I couldn't stop them. I was scrubbed." He leaned in. "But you have the key, don't you?" She looked at him, finally looked deeply. "No performance, no shield," then nodded. "In my notebook. Always." That night, they sat by a dying fire. She handed him a torn page from her journal coordinates. "Not for a lab, but for a grave, my father," she said. "They didn't kill him in a lab. They buried him in the basin after he refused to draw false maps for their covert sites. But before he died, he encoded the final coordinates into the contours of his last topography file." Ruiz unrolled the drawing. It looked like nothing at first, just a river system. Then it clicked. A heat line masked as a current, elevation, points shaped into a number string, a valley drawn like a fingerprint. Ruiz stared. "It's a neural map," she nodded. "It leads to the control server for Orchid's master site. If we get there first, we expose everything. If Dia gets there, they overwrite it forever." He folded the map carefully. "You still trust me?" She gave a tired smile. "You're the only one who came back. The journey wasn't military." They moved on foot, through silent terrain, evading checkpoints, slipping between worlds. She was the guide now. Ruiz was the guardian. Along the way, she shared more. How she was recruited at 19, not for field work, but for her uncanny ability to see truth in distortion, to draw meaning from chaos. How she'd been used to locate foreign assets, sometimes without her knowing the stakes. How she once deciphered a satellite misfire that killed civilians. "That's when I stopped trusting missions," she said. Ruiz listened. He didn't try to fix it. Just walked beside her. They reached the basin 3 nights later. It was beautiful and deadly. A quiet hollow beneath the mountains, ringed by old stones and new wires. Satellite dishes disguised as irrigation towers. Beneath it, buried by decades of secrecy, Orchid's nerve center. Lena crouched beside an inlet vent, checking the oxygen pressure. "They're still inside," she whispered. "But the core relay hasn't activated yet. We're early." Ruiz opened his pack. Inside, a pulse disruptor. Just enough to fry one server bank. She looked at him. "You brought a kill switch, I brought a choice." They slipped inside. Not with violence, but with knowledge. Lena mapped their every step by memory. Ruiz took out one guard using silence and timing. Inside the data room, rows of green lights blinked like artificial stars. Lena moved toward the main console. "This is it," she said. "One press and it transmits Orchid's origin files, every name, every signature, every operation." Ruiz stared. "And if you walk away, they bury it." Again, she hovered her hand over the screen. "I've never had this kind of power," she said, "and never wanted it." He stepped forward. "Then don't use it to punish." "I'm not." She pressed the screen. Transfer initiated, data streamed. Warnings flashed. Sirens lit up. Like fire. But it was done. She turned to Ruiz. "You better go. This place won't be here much longer." "What about you?" She smiled faintly. "I've got one last map to draw. Outside." As the base erupted in system failure and Orchid Division's secrets bled into global channels, Ruiz climbed the ridge one last time and looked back. He never saw her again. But the world did. Weeks passed. The Orchid Division was exposed. The leaked files spread like wildfire through encrypted diplomatic channels and watchdog media. It didn't hit the mainstream, not fully, but in the circles that mattered. Truth had finally cracked through the armor of secrecy. Names were redacted. Facilities were shuttered. Political inquiries opened in quiet chambers. Governments denied everything, but behind closed doors, operations halted. Funds were frozen. Contracts ended. Whistleblower protocols were revised across multiple NATO departments. And somewhere inside a locked cabinet at DIA headquarters, a single document was placed in a classified file. The Lena Ward anomaly. Internal failure. Ethical intelligence exception. Do not pursue. They didn't thank her. They just stopped hunting her. Back at FOB Kestrel, the changes were quieter. The mood was different, more measured. Ruiz noticed it first in the way new recruits were briefed. Less bravado, more precision, more respect for intel. The unspoken lesson: listen to the quiet ones. They often see what we overlook. Captain Hart took over the recon analytics division and began hand-drawing map exercises into field training. An art almost lost in the digital age. One day, a recruit asked why they were being taught to draw elevation by hand. When drones could see everything, Hart replied, "Not everything. and not always when it counts. Ruiz stayed in contact with Colonel Morris, who'd gone half gray in 6 months. The old man looked out over the base from his tent one evening and said, "She was never ours to protect, was she?" "No," Ruiz replied, "but she protected us anyway." Then he paused. She could have buried it, the server, the story. No one would have blamed her, but she didn't. "No," Ruiz said. "She made sure someone remembered." The memory of her lingered. Not in headlines, in echoes. An NGO relief team in the Baltics reported a woman matching her description: quiet, helpful, fluent in 7 languages, teaching girls to read topographic maps using only paper and charcoal. They didn't know her name. An old UN official in Montenegro mentioned her as the one who walked into the embassy with a suitcase of coordinates that ended a 6-month human smuggling operation. In northern Syria, a nomad child once described a traveler with strange eyes who could see where the land was hiding. The villagers started calling that part of the hills the silent map. Ruiz eventually left the SEALs. It wasn't dishonor, it was clarity. He took a position at a training academy, small, quiet, focused on ethics in military intel. They asked him to lecture about tactics. He told them stories instead. One afternoon, a cadet raised his hand. "Sir, who taught you to read terrain? Like it breathes." Ruiz hesitated, then said simply, "Someone who was never supposed to be there." And he told them about a woman who once read a map so carefully that the world had no choice but to listen. A year later, a letter arrived at his desk. No return address, no markings. Inside was a photo. Grainy, sun-washed, obviously taken without posing. It showed a woman crouched near a cliff edge, sketching lines in the dirt with a stick. A child beside her mimicked the motion. Tucked behind the photo was a torn piece of paper with 2 words. Handwritten, still drawing. He smiled. Elsewhere, far from bases and secrets and weapons, Lena Ward sat by a riverbank in a quiet village. She wore no watch, no badge, just a light scarf and a notebook made of recycled paper. She'd taught herself to slow down, to listen to trees, to mark time by how the shadows moved. Sometimes she still dreamed of the cave, the consoles, the moment she pressed the button that told the truth. Sometimes she wondered if it was enough. Then the village children would run to her, holding maps they'd made from memory. And she would say, "Show me where the water runs." And they would. Once, she came across a military convoy broken down on a back road near the border. The young captain argued with the driver over faulty satellite reception. Lena stepped out of the trees, walked up to their hood, and quietly corrected their heading. The captain frowned. "You military?" She smiled, "Just reading the land." He paused, then asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then said simply, "Lena." That was enough. He nodded, and they moved on, in time. The SEALs who once doubted her forgot the moment they first met her, but they never forgot how they'd felt when they realized she wasn't just reading a map. She was redefining the mission. No longer just coordinates, but conscience. Some truths don't need banners. They survive because someone quietly chose to do the right thing, not to be seen, not to be rewarded, but because they couldn't do anything else. And so the map kept growing, one line at a time, one choice after another, until the truth was no longer hidden in the dirt. It was drawn into the world and remembered. Some stories don't end with medals. They don't fade to black with a salute or close on headlines and honors. Some stories end quietly in the turn of a compass, the sketch of a forgotten valley, or a whispered name left out of history books, because the people who change the world most often do it without anyone noticing. Lena Ward was never meant to be recognized. She wasn't the loudest. She didn't command a unit. She didn't demand respect. She simply read the world differently. She saw what others missed, and in doing so, she saved lives, uncovered buried truths, and reminded a hardened military machine of something dangerously easy to forget, that clarity doesn't always come from power. Sometimes it comes from principle, and sometimes dignity wears dust and silence instead of armor and rank. For anyone who's ever been overlooked because they didn't speak the loudest, or doubted because they didn't fit the image others expected, this story was for you. For those who do the right thing even when no one's watching. For those who carry the weight of knowledge that others are too afraid to face. For those who refuse to become what broke them, you are not alone. And if Lena's story resonated with you, of her quiet courage, her unwillingness to be erased, her decision to choose peace over applause moved something inside you, we invite you to leave a single word in the comments. Word. It's the German word for dignity. A word that means more than just pride. It means holding your head high when others want you to kneel. It means choosing what's right even when it costs you everything. It means staying human even in places built to strip that away. So if you felt something during this story, if you've ever walked alone through silence, because it was the honest path, then type word below. Let it stand as a quiet tribute not just to Lena Ward but to anyone who's ever had to read the map alone. Because sometimes, the people we dismiss as unimportant are the ones drawing the line between justice and forgetting.